Hey everyone, welcome back. So yeah, we have been writing our automation test from some time. And if we have a look at existing our test case, we have written source demo login.ts where we are hard coding the username and password directly in the test. Now, when we are creating a proper framework, it's not a good idea to keep your data, either login data or test data directly in the test because it might change. Your login data might change. And as I discussed in the previous videos as well, when you're writing a test, it should be less changeable when some data or some web element changes or something changes, right? Some data changes. So for that, what you have to do is move all these test data, whatever is required, for example, username, password, or any form filling data to some other node data source or other files, and then call it from there so that you can use it here. So there are many ways you can store your data. You can create one TypeScript file normally and then keep all your username and password or any test data, or widely used if people are working in Selenium, they're using Excel. But these days, JSON has become very popular because it's very lightweight, it's language independent, platform independent, and this JSON basically when you're writing, it's nothing but syntactically it's very much similar to the JavaScript or the TypeScript object itself. So it is very much compatible with TypeScript and JavaScript when we are working with these Node.js based frameworks, right? So that's why we are going to use JSON in our framework. Now let's see what exactly is the JSON, what is the format, and what we can write in the JSON. So what we can do, we can create one folder inside the test itself. So I'll select this folder, right click, new folder, data. Inside that, let's keep one create JSON file. So I'll give some name dot, the extension of JSON will be JSON. So this is the extension. Now once this is created, you need to follow certain standards when you're writing a JSON file or JSON data. It's not like you can just write anything and it will accept it. It's going to give you error. So just let's understand first what is the format. So JSON data or the JSON file should start with object. That means the curly bracket. These are open and closed. And inside that only you have to write anything. Okay. Now the format, what and all it expects. So whenever you write a JSON, it should have a key and a value pair always. And JSON will always consist of key and value pair. So again, key should be in double quote. It is mandate. You cannot write like name and then you have to separate value separated by colon and then value. So first will be key colon and second will be value. So for example, I'll say tester1. Now this key cannot be key must be double quoted. That's what it says. So it should be always in the double quoted. Even single quote will not accept. So always write key in the double quote, then colon and the value. So JavaScript accepts key always in the double quote. The value can be different. For example, value can be a string in a double quote, or we can say value can be even number as well. Then value can be even Boolean, for example, employed false. So it accepts a string, it accepts number, it accepts Boolean, habit, and you don't have habit. So it accepts even null as well. Then it accepts even array also. So in array, you can write something like skills, WebdriverIO, then JavaScript, TypeScript, and at the end, comma, it accepts even object as well. So for example, what kind of object? Previous company. And in object in the sense curly bracket again. So first curly bracket starts here, but again, and this is the key, and you can have again one more object inside an object, and then you can give company name one. So you can say Amazon. Sorry, you have to say key value pair now. So whenever you're writing an array, you can just write actual data, but this is another object. And whenever you're writing an object like how we are writing here, it should be a key value pair. So here you'll say company one, Amazon, company two, Google, and so on and so forth. Another thing, when you notice, I'm keep on adding comma, 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 comma here also, here also, here also. If you remove comma here, you'll get an error. But for example, this is an array. So at the end of the array, if you give comma, you'll get error. So you should not give comma at the end of object or array. For example, in this object, this is the last key value pair. So I'm not giving comma. And here for this complete object, this is the last key, so I'm not giving comma. But as soon as you add anything else, for example, nickname and key and value pair, admin user, then you'll get error. So because you have not added comma here, so you have to add comma and then leave it. At the end, if you add comma again, then you will get error. So just understand these things. JSON will be always in the form of object first. Then key should be always in the double quote. Without double quote, you'll get error. And it should be a key value pair. Value can be string, number, boolean, null, array, and object again, right? And make sure at the end you don't add comma. So these are the way you can write your JSON data, and it is up to you how you want to use the data. For example, in test framework, what kind of data you required and how you exactly format it and you store it is what strategy that you need to define when you're writing actual test cases. Now this just wanted to show you, but we are not going to require all this. But let's delete this one. Now we go to source demo login.ts, and here if you see, I have used username and password here directly in the test class. So one way is you can just write in a JavaScript object or TypeScript object. For example, after describe block, I'll say const login data equal to, in the curly bracket, you can say username colon, and then this can be the username, and then comma again, password colon, and this can be your password. And then you can read it from here. So instead of reading username here, you have to say login data, and then if you type dot, you'll get username and password. So you'll say username, and then if you here say login data dot password. So now instead of writing it here, you can directly mention in this place in the as a JavaScript object. Even you can move this to a TS file, right? So this is one way. And for example, here as well, you have to say login data. This is the object name, so you have to say login data dot username, right? And you can store in this way. So this is one way, but because we don't want to keep our moving parts or the data or anything else in our test cases, we're going to move this from here to JSON file, right? So let's delete this. We're not going to use this one. And in the data, we'll keep, let me take the reference first and then we'll delete later. So we need username and password. Now there are times where you might need to test with a valid username and invalid, like invalid username also, right? So it can be combination of valid and invalid test data. So you can, what I will do, instead of creating user key and value pair, I'll say valid. It will be another object. First, let's see in the simple way. Double quote, username colon, and the value. So value is this. Then again comma, password colon, and then password whatever we have here. So you can read this. This is the way you can keep simple JSON object, username, key and value pair, username and value, password and the value. Now let's delete this because we are not going to use this. Now we need to first import this data file in our test cases. So how you can import? You have to say import, then any name, any meaningful name. I'll say login data, but you can keep anything as you want. From, then you have to see, you have to read the data. So what is the path? Currently we are in specs folder, right? So you have to go from here to test, and then you have to jump in this. So you have to say dot dot slash. Now you're getting the data folder which I have created, auto suggestion. So I'll click on it, then slash, but you're not getting auto suggestion for login.json. Even if you type login.json, right? It is not going to read. It will not be, cannot find model JSON file. Consider using resolve JSON model to import model with .json extension. That means when you are using JavaScript, we are using TypeScript here. When you are using JavaScript, you will be able to read it automatically. You don't have to do any extra configuration. But if you're using TypeScript, you have to do slight changes you have to add here. It says consider a resolve JSON module to import with a .json. So you have to add two things in tsconfig file. You go to tsconfig file, and up inside a compiler option, you can say resolve JSON model. If you type right, you'll get the auto suggestion. So resolve JSON model, make it true. Now what you have to do, let's see what it will still give you error because you will not be able to understand it. It is still saying the model is declared with export and can only use. So here, if you see login data, right, we are not going to, it will still give you error. So what you have to do, let's first reload. So if you want to reload this Visual Studio Code, you can press Control Shift P in the Windows, Command Shift P in the Mac, and then search for reload. You'll get reload web views and reload windows. Select reload windows. So it will reload the data, right? You'll still get the error because it will not allow you to import it. So you have to add one more thing. Double quote ES module intro. So there is something called ES module. Emit additional JavaScript to ease support for importing common JS module. So you have to use this also now and make this also true. So you have to enable two things in tsconfig file: resolve JSON module, ES module intro, make it true, reload your page if you have not reloaded, and then error will go away. Now how you can access that? You have to say login data, right, dot, and then as soon as is dot, you'll get auto suggestion username dot password. Now suppose if I add one more thing here, name, tester one, we have added one more key here. Now if we go and if I type login data dot, you'll get automatically all the new also updated key also. Sometimes you might not get this the new updated key, so you reload your Visual Studio Code by pressing Command Shift or Control Shift P and then reload Windows, and then you'll get your data, right? So let me just remove this, name is not required. At the end you should not add comma. So now this is going to work, and the same way we have updated here also our username and password, correct? Now if you run this npm run wdio, because we want to run only this file, we don't want to run all the files. Let's add this here. Let's try to run this, and it should work perfectly fine. It is giving error, so let's understand what is the error. So looks like there is some change in, because we are using, if you go tsconfig file, we are using module as es next. It will change the way we are reading the JSON file. So if you are on version 16 or before and you are not using ES6 ES next here, then this is going to work. But if you are using ES next, then you have to add one more extra line. So you have to say assert type, and in double quote you have to say JSON. So this is the slight change that you have to add. This is in the newer version. You have to add assert type and JSON, and then when you run this, let's clear this terminal. Let's try to run this again, and it should work fine this time. So it is trying to execute, entering username, password, and test has passed, right? So yeah, this is the way you can read your JSON data, and then your test is going to work perfectly fine, because this is the latest node version changes has come. So whenever you're reading a JSON file, you have to add this as well, assert type JSON, right? So now we have used. Now another thing that I wanted to show you, in the JSON object itself, you want to test with a valid user and then maybe with the invalid user as well. So for example, I have here test here called should login with the valid standard user, and then here should not login with invalid user. I can say invalid user, and let's try to use some invalid user as well. And here when we are using invalid user, here it should be not to be displayed. It should not display the product title page. It should not log in, right? So let's go to the, now we need to reform this data how we are writing. So we can use something like key valid, and then you can add here username and password. So I'll cut it from here, I paste it here and I remove the comma at the end, and then comma again, and then I'll say invalid, and again object. Now here username and password can be invalid, so I'll say random user. Now let's change the, so you have to say login data dot valid, because we are using valid here, dot username, and here you have to say valid dot password. In this test case we are going to use invalid, so you have to say dot invalid dot username dot invalid dot password, and let's run here also valid dot username. So let's run only these two test cases because we have just now added, so I'll say add only and dot only. So if you are adding only to these two, it will run only these two. And let's say whether with this changing the object structure where we are using valid and invalid data, whether this is working fine or not. Yeah, so it is still working fine and the test has passed, right? So that's how you can use your JSON data as a source of object, and then you can have your test more readable plus easily maintainable. Now we are going to see in the future also what are the different ways where you can leverage this username password format, so JSON data format, and then you leverage TypeScript to create some better methods while filling the forms. That's it for this video. Thank you so much.